Welcome to the Luke Macias Show. Dustin Burrows State Affairs Committee, chaired by Representative Ken King, is killing a substantial amount of conservative policy, literally sitting on a broad spectrum of Republican policies. And we are going to talk about the consequences of that committee, a committee that Dustin Burrows really designed to be maybe one of the most liberal state affairs committees that has existed in modern history. The State Affairs Committee was not this bad under Dade Phelan. It was not this bad under Dennis Bonnen. So we're going to talk about that, as well as the Texas House's moves to criminalize the creation and distribution of memes. Let's get to the show. The State Affairs Committee is the most consequential committee in the legislature after the Calendars Committee. The Calendars Committee could arguably be the most consequential, but members of the Calendars Committee don't matter as much as members of the State Affairs Committee. The chairman matters more. And so the chairman and the speaker really decide what makes it on the calendar, and the members of the committee are kind of just along for the ride. But in state affairs, each and every vote matters. Now, even under Dade Phelan, the State Affairs Committee, while not producing or even at times sitting on a lot of policy, chaired by Todd Hunter, who's now the Calendars chair, the committee still had the votes often to advance good policy. It just didn't happen. Speaker didn't want to make it happen. And Dustin Burrows did something very unique this session. When taking this committee, he actually took it to the left of the previous committee. In many committees, they got more conservative. The committee that handles gun legislation got more conservative. The Criminal Jurisprudence Committee got more conservative. A lot of other committees are more conservative today than they were under Dade Phelan, and that has to do with the fact that he has 20 more conservative members. But when he assigned the State Affairs Committee, he put Ken King as the chair, and Ken King is one of the 10 most liberal Republicans in the Texas House. So you're automatically putting a person in his chair who's going to oppose a lot of Republican policy and side often with Democrats. But he went above and beyond that. The way the State Affairs Committee is picked, of course, you have 6 members that get to be there by seniority. And the members that choose that are some of the most senior members: Yvonne Davis, Drew Darby, Ryan Guillen, Charlie Guerin, Richard Raymond, John Smithy. 3 of those individuals voted for David Cook for Speaker: John Smithy, Ryan Guillen, Richard Raymond, and 3 of them voted for Dustin Burrows. But none of them are rock-ribbed, hardcore conservative fighters. And so you already start with the seniority appointments, putting this committee in a position where it's going to be a little more moderate. And so it is incumbent upon the speaker to take his appointments to that committee and make them more conservative, put more conservative members in that can counterbalance those seniority appointments to make sure that conservative policy still has a path. He appointed Ken King as speaker, Ana Hernandez, a Democrat, as vice chair, and then he put Rafael Anchia, a Democrat, Sinfronia Thompson and Chris Turner, 2 liberal Democrats, in there. And then the Republicans he selected were Lacey Holt, John McQueenie, Will Metcalf, Dade Phelan. Again, Dade Phelan being one of the most liberal Republicans this session. I think we will clearly see that he's ranked as one of the 10 most liberal Republicans. Will Metcalf, Lacey Holt, John McQueenie, none of them right now are probably ranked amongst the top 30 conservatives. And so my point being is that there is nobody on the State Affairs Committee that would be in the conservative third of the Republican caucus. So what has that led to? What are the consequences of Dustin Burrows empowering this committee in this way? Well, they're sitting on a substantial amount of conservative policy, and Representatives Andy Hopper and Brent Money decided this week to attempt to try to force action on that policy, either by having a vote taken, the House can vote to compel a committee to report a bill, or by having a bill re-referred. If that committee is going to kill a bill, they can re-refer it. Let's go to this clip of Representatives Andy Hopper and Brent Money addressing Speaker Burrows and trying to get that committee to take action. Let's go to this clip.
Speaker, would you recognize me for a motion to require the Committee on State Affairs to report House Bill 1308?
No.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
The Republican Party of Texas platform, Plank 232, says that Texas shall require all employers to screen new hires through the free E-Verify system to prevent the hiring of illegal aliens and of anyone not legally authorized to work in the United States, and to protect the jobs for American workers.
Mr. Hopper, that's not a parliamentary inquiry.
Is the chair...
Mr. Hopper, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, is the chair aware of whether any bills
Hopper,
that meet this standard have been heard or will be heard by committee
Hopper,
in this
chamber?
chamber?
Mr. Hopper, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is the chair aware of whether any bills that meet this standard have been heard or will be heard by a committee in this chamber?
That is not a proper parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Hopper.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
The Republican Party has identified HB 1308 as a legislative priority. House Bill 1308 was referred to the Committee on State Affairs on March 10th, 2025,
Mr. Hopper, that's not a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is the chair advised as to whether this committee intends to hear this bill at all?
Mr. Hopper, that is not a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Hopper, for what purpose? State your inquiry.
This bill is a legislative priority for the Republican Party. If you won't recognize me at this time,
Mr.
is
Hopper,
there a
that's
time
not
you
a
would
proper
recognize me?
parliamentary inquiry.
Is there a time, Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry?
State your inquiry.
Is there a time that you would recognize me for this
That
motion?
is not a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you.
Mr. Money, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, will you recognize me to make a motion to re-refer one of the bills to ban taxpayer-funded lobbying to a different committee?
No.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is the chair aware that Senate Bill 19 by Senator Mays Middleton was referred to State Affairs on March 25th, over 1 month ago?
Mr. Money, that is not a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, my notes show that you were
Mr. Money, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
My notes show that you were a joint author of the bills to ban taxpayer-funded lobbying in both the 87th and 88th session. Mr. Speaker, is there a way to get this bill from State Affairs into a committee that might hear and refer that bill to the House?
Mr. Money, that is not a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Am I to take from your position here that you will not be taking any motions to refer bills or do anything unusual as far as moving and advancing Republican priorities
The chair
today?
declines to answer hypothetical questions, and that is not a proper parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Money.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A couple weeks ago, I talked about how both sides of the legislature might be killing E-Verify legislation. The good news is that the Texas Senate quickly acted upon that legislation. Chairman Schwartner had a hearing and then voted it out of his committee rather quickly. That legislation is continuing to proceed through the process. But in the Texas House, real, true E-Verify legislation that is substantial at any level is all stuck in state affairs, including House Bill 1308 by Carl Tepper. Carl Tepper filed E-Verify on November 13th, and I will say, looking at it, it is a good bill. So this bill is a good bill, and Carl Tepper filed it back in November before the session even starts. He's Dustin Burrows' neighbor. He was with Dustin. He's an ally of Dustin Burrows. It took until March 10th for it to be referred to State Affairs. That alone is a delay, okay? That took quite a long time for House Bill 1308 to get referred. It could have been referred in February. It was not. They waited till mid-March to refer it, and then the State Affairs Committee has sat on it since then. On April 28th, it was scheduled for a hearing, which you need a hearing in order to get the bill out. And then it was withdrawn from the schedule on the same day. And there's all sorts of rumors about maybe Representative Tepper asking Ken King to withdraw his bill. Often what will happen is the chair goes to the member and says, I need you to withdraw your bill, but I need you to tell me to withdraw your bill. That way I can tell everybody that you wanted the bill withdrawn and I don't look like the bad guy. And then the member's like, I kind of have to withdraw my bill because this is the chairman of State Affairs. He's one of the three most powerful people in the legislature. He's telling me to tell him to do this, so I'm going to do it to be a team player. I don't know what happened, but all I know is the bill was withdrawn, so it didn't receive a hearing in April. Andy Hopper gets up and simply asks, can I make a motion to compel the committee to report? And there's a reason that motion exists. Is because the body, if the speaker will recognize that motion, can vote on having the committee vote out that bill. They could say, we want the committee to report this bill so that we can bring it to the body, debate it, and move on with it and dispose of that topic. Of course, Dustin Burrows said no. Brent Money actually attempted to make a motion regarding Senate Bill 19, which is a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. This is an obvious win. And even Mays Middleton's bill, which several senators voted to water down, they took out Texas Municipal League, Texas Association of Counties, TASB, TASA from the bill. The bill as it currently exists would still ban around $800 million of taxpayer-funded lobbying. So all of these individual lobbyists who are paid by all these tax-collecting entities would have to do something else. This is an obvious good policy. The governor supports it. The lieutenant governor supports it. The Republican Party of Texas has made it a legislative priority. This is a win. This is an easy way to get a win for the grassroots. It is sitting in state affairs. Sitting there. So Brent Money is saying, hey, we need to move this bill, pure and simple. We've got to get this bill out of state affairs. It's been sitting there since March. It hasn't even received a hearing. And I mean, understand the Texas Senate disposed of this in early March so that there was plenty of time to do it. And it's just been sitting there for a month without receiving a hearing. So Brent Money says, can we re-refer it? Can we send it to a different committee? Dustin Burrows says no. He knows it's languishing in the State Affairs Committee. He's leaving it languishing in the State Affairs Committee. And then the other bill, I want you to think about this. The State Affairs Committee is killing one of the most important immigration policies of the session. They're killing one of the obviously most important fiscal policies to stop taxpayer-funded lobbying of the session. And they're also killing one of the more important cultural, social bills of the session, which is House Bill 239. It was referred to State Affairs in February. It has not received a hearing. And this is by Valerie Swanson. The bill has over 80 co-authors. I want you to understand how this works. In March, Valerie Swanson's bill had enough co-authors alone to pass the House floor. If the co-authors just voted for it, it would pass. So you might ask yourself, why hasn't it passed? If it has enough co-authors to pass. And the answer is because it hasn't received a hearing. Chairman Ken King is sitting on it. The Texas Senate passed Senate Bill 240, which is companion legislation. It's identical to Valerie Swanson's bill. It passed the Senate last week. It came over. It actually, on April 24th, it passed the Senate. Now, one of the things Dustin Burrows could have done is he could have taken Senate Bill 240 and he could have referred it to a different committee than State Affairs. Think about it this way. All this bill does, by the way, is it says that biological men may not go into private spaces with biological females. They can't go into the bathroom. They can't go into the locker room. They can't go into anything. A bunch of people signed on to this bill after we started bringing more attention to the fact that men are going into women's restrooms in the Texas Capitol. I even heard several people saying things like, well, these guys want to just worry about who's in the bathroom at the Capitol. I want to focus on who's in all the bathrooms. Let's get that done. So they co-authored Representative Swanson's legislation. But you know what? The bill's dying. It's not even getting a hearing. Senate Bill 240 could have been referred to a different committee so that that committee could take care of this issue and bring it to the floor. We know it has the votes to pass, and it's dying in state affairs. It was referred to state affairs on Monday. On Monday, Speaker Burrows could have sent that bill to any committee. He sent it to state affairs. Ken King is right now positioned to kill more Republican policy than any other member. Last session, the member that killed more Republican policy than anybody else was Speaker Burrows. As chair of calendars, he killed a bunch of it at the end. And it could be that Chairman Hunter still does that. I hope he does not do that. But right now, Ken King is sitting on a vast amount of conservative policy, and I'm just scratching the surface in telling you about Senate Bill 240, the Women's Privacy Act that keeps men out of women's private spaces. Senate Bill 19, the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. House Bill 1308, and what will eventually be lowest course E-Verify legislation that comes over. There are so many ways to take care of these issues. Why were they all sent to this committee? And why was that committee intentionally designed to be a committee where you knew you would probably not have the votes to get most Republican policy out of it? And you knew you had a chairman who was willing to sit down and kill it all. Ken King and Dustin Burrows put out a document last year called the Texas Conservative Commitment. And I talked about this on the show when it came out. The document's designed to kind of undermine the Republican Party of Texas legislative priorities. It was to reset the goalpost. Okay? It was to reset the goalpost. So the idea was, hey, we need to decide what our standard is. And in it, it says, as conservative members and nominees of the House of Representatives, as Texans, we propose to strengthen the bond of trust between people and their elected representatives. That is why we offer this agenda and written commitment, which will transform the future of Texas. This is the Texas Conservative Commitment. In the 89th legislative session, we will continue to create a culture of life, fully protecting it from conception to natural death, ensure Texas is the most pro-Second Amendment state in the country, defend our laws that ban transgender medical surgical treatments on children, and reduce regulation to keep the Texas economy growing. We shall unite, prioritize, and pass the following. And included in this list is ban taxpayer-funded lobbying, prohibit the use of tax dollars to fund lobbyists, and ensure tax dollars are not used against the taxpayer interest. And do you know who signed this commitment? Ken King and Dustin Burrows. The Speaker and the Chair of State Affairs signed this commitment. They said, in order to strengthen the bond of trust between the people and their elected representatives, we're committing to you to pass a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. The Chair of State Affairs and your current Speaker of the House signed this commitment, and the bill's dying in the Texas House and hasn't even gotten a hearing. Why? They're the ones who said this is the way you create trust. So if their way of creating trust is to publicly commit to a set of priorities and to tell the people of Texas, if we're in charge, we're going to do it. And then they actually do get in charge and they're in the most powerful positions to do it, and they're still not doing it. What does that say about their commitment to even these issues? And this list was set up to be less than the Republican Party of Texas legislative priorities. So as you can see, Ken King is right now presenting himself as a major problem and roadblock to Republican policy. And Ken King needs to move these bills. There's still time for much of this legislation to become law. Taxpayer-funded lobbying in the Women's Privacy Act could come out of his committee. He has weeks to get it out. And we should not stop talking about it. And it makes sense why certain members are trying to make motions to move policy out of that committee or through the committee, because it's just sitting on things that everybody knows we have the votes to pass. It's not about whether we have the votes to pass Republican policy. It's about whether the Texas House of Representatives intends to let members of the legislature debate those topics. That's what the next 4 weeks is going to come down to. The Texas House has had time, unfortunately, to think about criminalizing memes, and we'll talk about that in just a second.
Do you feel increasingly isolated? Like the world has gone insane and you are part of one small, clear-headed remnant? Let me be the first to tell you, you're not alone. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, and on my new show, Come and Take It, I'm going to call out the crazy so you can be empowered to change Texas and the nation. Overcome the schemes of the left designed to keep Texans paralyzed and silent. Watch or listen to Come and Take It today.
Now, I will tell you one topic they are debating, and that is potentially outlawing memes. HB 366 is a bill by Dade Phelan. Now, the most important thing about this bill you have to understand is that the bill was filed in February, but it got a low bill number 366. And you might say, how did that happen? And this is something really remarkable. Back in November, HB 365 and then 367 and 368 and 369 were filed in November. But the speaker at the time, who was Dade Phelan, reserved the bill number 366 for a particular reason. You see, Dade Phelan had thousands of Democrats come out and vote in his primary to keep him elected. And when they did that, he won by 366 votes. So he preserved the bill number HB 366 for a bill that he intended to file. Now, I don't know, at the time, he did not intend to file it because he thought he was going to be speaker at the time. But he reserved this bill maybe because he was going to have somebody file this bill. And here's what it says. A person may not, with the intent to influence an election, knowingly cause to be published, distributed, or broadcast political advertising that includes an image, audio recording, or video recording of an office holder or candidate's appearance, speech, or conduct that did not occur in reality, including an image, audio recording, or video recording that has been altered using generative artificial intelligence technology, unless the political advertising includes a disclosure from the person or another person on whose behalf the political advertising is published, distributed, or broadcast, indicating that the image, audio recording, or video recording did not occur in reality. Here's what this is. There was a picture of Nancy Pelosi hugging Hakeem Jeffries, giving him a hug, okay? And Club for Growth, one of the largest conservative PACs in the nation, was involved in Dade Phelan's primary. And in their mailer, they took out Hakeem Jeffries' face, like with Photoshop, and put Dade Phelan's face. And it was showing how cozy he was with all the Democrats. And so it's a picture of Nancy Pelosi, like giving Dade Phelan a hug. Now, the thing is, if you look at the mailer, you don't look at the mailer and go, yeah, this is exactly Dade Phelan. And Dade acted like this was the most deceitful political hatchet job that had ever been done. I mean, you go back and look at political advertisements of the founding fathers, and they're making cartoons of each other and all this stuff. And they're not putting at the very bottom, this is not actually John Adams. This is a depiction of John Adams. Dade Phelan says, if you do not put this disclosure saying this image did not occur in reality, you're a criminal and could be put in jail. That is what his bill says. That is insane. That is crazy. And it's incomprehensible that the Texas House is making time to discuss this bill while also killing all these other bills. 80 people can sign on to a bill that says we should keep biological men from entering private spaces of females. That bill dies. But you know what bill is moving? A bill that says you're a criminal if you Photoshop an image where you put a picture of an office holder. And here's the thing. It doesn't even have to say, like, it has to look realistic. Do you understand? Somebody could take Microsoft Paint. I could take my iPhone and like try to cut a picture and put it on like a horse or a dinosaur or a rhino. And it's like, you have to say this picture didn't really happen, or you're a criminal. It's nuts. Absolutely bonkers. But the Texas House did take time to vote on it. I will say I'm very grateful. In second reading, 39 Republicans voted against this. So almost a majority of the Republican caucus voted against this bill, a very large size. Now we'll go to the Senate. The Senate tends to not consider legislation that is a complete violation of the First Amendment. And so I doubt this legislation has much traction, but you should tell your state senator that House Bill 366 is a massive danger, an attack on the grassroots and conservatives, and unconstitutional. And so I would encourage you to do that. Guys, we are down to the final month of the legislative session. Everything that you and I and everybody else has worked together toward is going to culminate in however many victories we are all able to collectively accomplish in the next 4 weeks. And please stay focused on that. There's so many things that could distract you. Stay focused on getting as much conservative policy across the finish line as possible. That is what we do everything in politics for, is to actually accomplish things from a policy perspective. So I hope you stay engaged. I hope you're aware of what's going on. I will try to keep you in the loop as much as possible. Ken King needs to open the floodgates, or Dustin Burrows needs to use the power that he has as the most powerful member of the Texas House of Representatives to move this policy forward with or without the State Affairs Committee. It's up to him, and it's up to Representative King. And I'm glad we have some representatives that are pushing back and fighting to make sure these issues are addressed. May God bless you, and may God bless Texas.